Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In the first story, we'll tell about the dispute between our OP and his boss. And guess who was right? But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Whatever the customer wants. Oh, really? Okay then, it's your loss. When I was younger, I used to work for a diner. I'd like to think I was a good worker and looked out for the interest of the business over the customers, because sometimes the customers demand ridiculous things that are not on the menu or things the restaurant will definitely lose money on. Anyway, at this diner we used to make fresh juices, which was a big craze at the time, everyone trying to juice and be healthy. The boss was in deep debt, so he was always kissing people's butt to keep the business going. One day, this lady notorious for being a pain in the butt walks in and says she wants to try a fresh juice because she started working out, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, no problem. What would you like in your juice? She replies, I want a juice with only spinach. I said, I'm sorry, but that's not possible. She insisted and I refused. She walked away upset. Before you ask, for those of you who don't have experience juicing, I can tell you that making pure spinach juice is just a bad business decision on the restaurant's part, because it takes a ton of spinach to make a 16-ounce glass of juice. I'm not exaggerating. It'd take me 3 huge bags that could maybe make 10 salads apiece just to make one juice. So that's 30 meals consisting primarily of spinach just to make one juice cup. So anyway, next morning my boss comes in and tells me that the lady was complaining about me and saying that I refused to serve her. So I tried to explain to him, but he stopped me and said that whatever the customers want is what I should give. He pretty much said, you're here for a certain job. If you don't want to do it, go home. So I said, fine, you're the boss. She comes in later that day and asks for an all-spinach juice. So I do as I'm told. I went to the basement and got 3 super-sized bags of spinach and started to throw them into the juicer by the fistful. As I'm about to finish, my boss is coming upstairs and sees what I'm doing and immediately flips the F out. What the hell do you think you're doing? I said, exactly what you told me to do. Make the juice for that crazy lady. He says, are you effing stupid? Look at all that spinach you're wasting. Me again? Well, I tried to tell you, but you didn't want to hear it. He ended up banning the lady from the restaurant entirely. And I was happy he felt as frustrated as I did when he scolded me for refusing something which was in his benefit. Well, in all fairness, you did try to warn him. The fact that he didn't listen, it's not your fault. And our second story. Submit what I have right now? Will do. In the past, I worked for a civil engineer, essentially working as an engineering intern despite lacking the certifications to be one officially. In effect, I could, and did, do everything he could, but it all needed signed off on by him in the end since he was the licensed engineer and I was officially just a CAD technician. However, despite me not actually being licensed, my work and troubleshooting abilities were good enough that he rarely looked at any of it except if I brought it to his attention for clarification or to suggest possible alterations or concerns. This involves one of those concerns. We were set up to do the site design for the new location of a moving business into an urban development area. The client was trying to save money, so instead of getting us to survey the site for them, they went with the lowest bidder and used someone else. That surveyor sent us the file, and I go to get started, but see that the survey is dated 10 years previously. I point this out, the boss informs client, they go to surveyor, and next day I get a new file dated 2 days previous. But it was the same file. They didn't resurvey, they just put a new date on the old file. You go cheap, you get cheap. Boss's take when I pointed it out was, not our problem, we can't verify site conditions. That's what the survey's for. If it's not accurate, that'll be his problem. We have a stamped survey stating that's what's there, so design to that. I wasn't happy with this as I figured we should at least let the clients know, but he was the boss. So I get designing. We end up with some tricky issue due to the way stormwater currently entered and left the property, combined with very strict city codes for the plot due to the urban development they had going in the area. Have to make sure everything is pretty for visitors to the city and it matches everything that'll be built around it. I finally get everything to code after some back and forth with the codes department to make sure there won't be any surprises when we go to planning meeting for permits and just from curiosity while waiting for boss to come and approve, submitting stamped copy to head of codes for final pre-approval, I pulled up the city's land tracking software and looked at the site. I immediately noticed some issues. Via the satellite imagery and street view photos, I could see there was a 5-lane road fronting the site, not the 2-lane road in survey. Additionally, actual conditions showed power poles on property and an existing building foundation that the neighboring business's parking lot extended into the property and had sturdy fence built around it. None of that was on the survey. A quick bit of searching found that the road had been expanded 5 years previously, well after the survey of 10 years ago, in anticipation of the upcoming plans for developing the area. With all of these things in mind, our design would actually be building into the roadway, our sidewalk was set directly over the existing power pole, and part of our client's building would be in the neighbor's encroaching parking. I grabbed the satellite photo and loaded it into our drawings underneath our design so that I could show my boss the problem. And it was a big problem, since the design was now very out of code if you consider actual conditions. If we submitted and get approval as it was, then the day the contractors went to site, they'd have to stop and report to the city, and the city would shut everything down and require inquiry and full restart project approval process. Costly just from a standpoint of the normal process fees, which would have to be paid all over again for a new project, but additional costs for any number of issues if the city wanted to make a point. And if the contractor wasn't smart enough not to start working when site didn't match plans, there could be even larger fees. Additionally, contractors bid based on the work expected using the plan's depictions of existing conditions versus planned development, an existing parking lot, fence, building foundation, and potential electrical, sewer, water to be removed, as well as a power pole to be relocated, would be a large additional cost that the contractors wouldn't know to bid during the process and would delay construction once on site. Plus negotiation of the additional costs for the unexpected work. I interrupted boss to bring this to his attention immediately because the boss was on a deadline to get new business open, and letting this play out would put him months behind. Boss looked it over and said, "Not our problem. He didn't want to use us for his surveying, let him deal with it. When it all goes down, the client will just end up having to use us for survey, and we'll get to do the project a second time. Package up what you already have and send it now." And he walked out. This attitude ticked me off. What boss basically meant was, we can get paid twice for the same project without any liability, so I don't care. And this wasn't the first time he'd pulled things like that, knowingly screwing over a client because he knew he couldn't be held liable and he'd get more money if he didn't help client out. I was already on my way out the door with only a week or so left at the business, so I decided to do what he told me to do and packaged up what I had, which included the layer showing actual conditions, and sent it to the head of codes. Now, this individual was the OCD type. Not necessarily a bad thing when dealing with verifying things are to code, but he could be a pain to work with as well. He personally went over the entirety of anything submitted to him and was not shy about returning a 50-plus page document because of a typo. So I knew that my slip-up wouldn't slip by him. When he saw it, he obviously had some questions. A Public Works surveying team ended up being sent to the site and confirmed actual conditions did not match those submitted. Turned into a bit of a mess, which my boss ended up not liable for, legally anyway, and did require restart of project. Given that the satellite image had been in our submitted files though, the client rightly assumed boss knew of the issue and decided not to use him for the redesign. Boss got upset at me, but I told him I must have missed turning off that layer in the program before generating the PDF to submit. That happens here and there when you're dealing in files with large numbers of layers, some that are set to be visible but not print, when a checkbox isn't checked or unchecked properly. It's one reason why the final product is supposed to be printed off and manually reviewed by the licensed engineer before it goes out. So he really couldn't do anything to me over it. And I moved on as planned shortly after. Doubt he learned from the incident, but one can only hope. Also, from what I know of that particular head of codes, anything coming from my boss's office is probably subject to much closer review now. As a side note, the original surveyor lost his surveying license in this state over this. Before learning this, I hadn't realized just how big an offense intentionally lying on credentials of a survey actually was. I just figured the surveyor would be liable for any costs incurred due to inaccuracies. And our last story. Now you can pay thousands for what had cost you nothing. So, backstory. I've had migraines for years, most of my adult life, and had to jump through so many hoops with insurance to get treatment covered and medications to where I now somewhat have them under control. These are the in bed, in the dark, ice pack on the head, no noise, no smell, I want to die, 2-day long type of migraines. So there's a new migraine med on the market and my neurologist writes me a script but says my insurance probably won't cover it, so I apply online for the manufacturer's program to get it at reduced cost for a year. Lo and behold, my insurance approves it. I asked them, made 2 phone calls to be sure, if adding this new med would affect any of my other coverages for medication. They say no. So I go to pick up the new script and the manufacturer program was cheaper out of pocket than my copay, so I use that and self-pay instead of using my private insurance. To be clear, my insurance is not paying for this medication, which would cost them thousands of dollars. Yes, they probably have some kind of program with the manufacturer as well, and cost me more out of pocket. So I'm on this new med for a couple months, and I get a letter from insurance that says since I'm taking the new med, they'll no longer cover another medication I'm taking. Really? I specifically asked you that. I appealed their decision, and it was denied. No surprise there. So now I'm having the pharmacy bill all of their new medication to my insurance, let them cough up for the additional thousands. I'll be happy to pay the few dollars more for the copay. Luckily, the new med seems to be working too. How on earth can you need to pay more when you're splitting the cost with the insurance company than when you're paying it yourself? There's something wrong with our healthcare system. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.